Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Australia once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a couple of times before. So the last review that I did from these guys came maybe a couple of months ago, and the one prior to that I think was about a year or two ago now, if memory serves me correctly. But these guys give me the impression that they're a very solid all-round brewery. But the beer we're going to have a look at from them today is one of their kind of bigger and bolder releases. It's a style that I haven't tried from them yet, and it's one that I've heard very, very good things about. So needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good one, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head down to Australia like I said. We're going to go to the state of Victoria, the city of Melbourne, and to be specific, we're going to the district of Braeside, and that means that we're going to have a look at what I believe is my third beer on the channel from Boatrocker Brewers and Distillers, or Boatrocker Brewery as I think I'll entitle the video. So this particular beer is called Ramjet. This is the 2023 edition, which celebrates 10 years of this beer, but it comes in at 10.8% ABV. It's an Imperial Stout, and this one has been aged in Starward Australian whiskey casks. So yeah, this should be really quite interesting. The last beer that we did from these guys, the Scotch Ale, was also barrel aged in Starward whiskey casks, and I was quite impressed with the profile that gave it. It made the beer feel a lot heavier than it actually was. So yeah, I'm curious to see how these barrels translate their flavours into an Imperial Stout. But this is a beer that I've heard very good things about from my good friend Sam Smalley over at Short and Stout Beer Reviews. He was quite excited when I told him that I got this one, so a big shout out to him in this video. I'll make sure I put the link to his channel in the video description below, and do make sure you go over and show him some love, because he does some really nice videos and he'll keep you a bit more up to date with the Aussie beer scene than I can. But yeah, it's certainly cool to be able to have a look at this beer for you here on the channel, and to cover any Australian breweries. I'm really curious about how the beer scene down there is progressing at the moment. But yeah, the Boatrocker Imperial Stout, 10.8% ABV, aged in Starward whiskey casks. So let's crack on with this one then and see what it has in store for us. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Boatrocker Brewery before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Australian playlist, along with a number of other things. That's being added to quite regularly, of course, because we do get a good selection of Aussie beer here in Hong Kong, which I'm very happy about. And do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Boatrocker Brewery and Distillery once again then. So, to give them their full name, Boatrocker Brewers and Distillers are based in Braeside in southeastern Melbourne in Victoria, down in Australia, and the company was founded back in 2009 by Andrea and Matt Houghton. So Matt was inspired to homebrew at a young age because he watched the Beer Hunter TV show with Michael Jackson, and a lot of people saw this actually, something I still need to watch in fact. But as a result, he travelled to many famous beer locations around the world, such as Belgium, Germany, England and Colorado, but upon his return to Australia, he found that he really lacked a good choice of beer, and so it was this that pushed him to start looking to brew his own stuff. So he then went to study brewing at Ballarat University, which was where he met his wife Andrea, and the pair then decided to contract brew a recipe that they had perfected for their friends, and this later became the Alpha Queen beer, and this was followed by the Hop beer and the Aotearoa Sma. But these beers went on to win various awards at different international beer festivals, and this only kind of helped them gather more and more momentum. But the success of these beers prompted Matt and Andrea to look at getting their own facility, and then in late 2012 they built their own brewery in the Braeside area of Melbourne. So when they moved into this brewery, they bought a bunch of barrels and started their barrel program, and so they were one of the first in Australia to do this. But in 2016 they received investment from the Hand Group, which took a 33% share of the company, and this helped them open up the barrel room across the road from the original brewery, which has 15 taps and seats 100 people. And they apparently started with about 100,000 litres of different wine, whiskey and bourbon barrels. But the following year they partnered up with Hippocampus Distillery to open their own distillery. This produces whiskey, gin, rum and vodka, and they also produce their own cocktails these days as well. So Boatrocker have expanded quite a lot, and they're doing a whole host of different things. But as of July 2024, these guys have produced around 240 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. And like I said to you, my impression of the stuff that they do is that they do a lot of different things, and they're pretty diverse. But I know that Sam really enjoys their stuff, and they've got a very good reputation actually as well. So yeah, pretty interesting brewery, and hopefully the next time I make it down to Australia, I can go and visit these guys and maybe film an out and about video at the barrel room. That would be really interesting. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Boatrocker Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, catch my breath. Let's go on and have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll just wipe the sweat off the can because I turned off the aircon to film this review because it makes too much noise. But yeah, you can see this one is really nicely presented, quite classy and things. I think I'll need to keep this can since it is a 10th anniversary beer. But you can see gold top on it, which is very nice. You can see the Starward whiskey distillery symbol over here as well, which I think is really nice. And as I said earlier, this one is the kind of 10th it's the 10th anniversary edition of this particular release, and I don't know if all of them have been aged in whiskey barrels. I guess probably if it's an anniversary kind of annual release. But yeah, the Starward Whiskey Distillery are from Port Melbourne in Victoria, which if I remember rightly is down the kind of eastern side of the kind of bay that Melbourne has. But yeah, really nicely presented. This one you can see the Boatrocker symbol on the can there as well, and just another little look at it for you there. This one is I think 375 milliliters if I'm not mistaken, which is quite a common measurement. Yeah, 375 milliliters, which is quite a common measurement in Australia. I don't know if that's a schooner or what it is, but yeah. It says on the side here, Ramjet 2023 is even more special than ever, signifying 10 years of big, bold, boozy brilliance. As always, this incredible stout is carefully cellared, integrating the flavours beautifully. Dark roast malts, low carbonation, and the signature whiskey hit are best delivered at around 8 degrees Celsius. So it's been in the fridge, it's probably about that by now since it's been sitting out for 20 minutes or so. But yeah, 10.8% ABV this one, Imperial Stout. Let's just see how we go with this. I'm very curious about it. Yeah, this is another beer that I picked up at Out of the Brew over in, I don't know if that's still Central or Sheung Wan, but in Hong Kong anyway. And they always get a good selection of different Aussie things there because the owner, of course, is Australian. But yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass and see what we have. So yeah, we've got pretty much everything out there, and we don't want to waste it, of course, because it is supposed to be a very good beer. And yeah, there we go. Let me just position that so that my OCD is happy, and there we go. Spilled a little drop. That's not good. But yeah, you can see with this one, when we poured it, it came out with just over a finger of a frothy, I would say kind of dark, medium to dark tan head there. I'll just let the camera focus on that a wee bit. Doesn't seem that it wants to, but yeah, you can see medium-sized bubbles sitting around the surface of the beer there. A few kind of more smaller ones going up further up. There's a little bit of soapiness there too. But yeah, you've got a lovely dark ebony rosewood colour to this beer as well, which is what you'd expect considering the the style that this beer is. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect the colour as well. But that can vary, that is quite difficult to do because of the fact that you've got a lot of black malt or special B or something like that in here from the just from the fact that it's an Imperial Stout, to put it bluntly. But yeah, this one, as I say, there's not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this beer. You can see the head has faded away a little bit. You've got a foamier ring around the edge of the glass there, and a few little kind of fluffy bits on the top of it there. But all in all, in terms of what you'd expect from an Imperial Stout, there's nothing particularly surprising about this one. But yeah, it looks pretty good. So yeah, really no carbonation visible in this one. Let's just shine the light through it. Yeah, this one, it's got a good little bit of haze to it as well, actually, which is a good little bit of opacity, which, that can vary from beer to beer, of course, but usually if you've got opacity like that, it's because there's a bit of wheat in the beer, and that helps it retain its head a little bit better. But yeah, all in all, I think this one is pretty much as you'd expect from an Imperial Stout. So when it comes to this style of beer, there's a few things to remember. There's a few ways you can play with this style to do different things to it. Of course, you can barrel age it, which is going to take your mouthfeel down a little bit but give you all these lovely infused flavours. You can do a longer wort boil, which is going to give you a slightly drier flavour but a lot more kind of complexity within the brown sugars. And you can also do things like do a double or even triple mash, which is going to give you that big sticky sort of mouthfeel. Many different types of Imperial Stouts. Of course, you've got the Russian Imperial Stout, which is the more kind of roasty toasty one. You've got the Imperial pastry stouts these days, which for me are a little bit of a hit or miss. You've got the milk stouts as well, which usually contain lactose and are a little bit sweeter. Imperial coffee stouts are another one that I really enjoy. So I'm quite curious to see exactly what this one's going to have in store for us, because I haven't even smelt it yet. But these are some of the things you should know about the Imperial Stout as a style. So let's have a wee look at this one then in the nose and see what it's got in store for us, because nothing really surprising about the appearance of this one actually. So, oh, that smells beautiful. It smells really, really nice. Yeah, I'm going to say straight away, I can see why Sam was quite excited that I managed to get one of these, because the aroma of this is beautiful. I have to admit, I've really missed the old school RISs, because the pastry stout's just kind of taken over, and as I say, for me they're a hit or miss. I don't like the granola flavour, I don't like the kind of marzipan-y flavour that some of them can have. Yeah, I prefer the old school Imperial Stouts like this, or the Imperial Milk Stouts, or an Imperial Coffee Stout. Those I can enjoy. But yeah, for me, this one smells absolutely beautiful. I'm just going to say straight away, thumbs up to Boatrocker. I'm going to enjoy this beer, really. But it's got everything you could want. You've got a lovely big bit of brown sugar in there. You've got the roasty, toasty backbone. You've got a good bit of barrel, a little bit of fruit, and there is just a wee bit of hoppy character to this one, of course, too. So, yeah, the way that all of this one goes together is just awesome. So, as I say, I'll dedicate this review to Sam, because he was quite excited that I got a hold of this one to try. So, yeah, just looking at the camera, it seems it's got a lot of light, but yeah, let's have a little proper look at the nose of this one and just break it down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. So yeah, for me, the backbone of this beer is, of course, the lovely smooth oaky character coming out of the beer. Now, the oakiness in this one is very smooth. As I've explained with oakiness before, I find European oak is a little bit drier, but it gives you a little bit more vanilla, whereas the American oak is a little bit smoother and it gives you a wee bit more of a kind of butterscotchy type character. But yeah, the oak in this one is very, very smooth. I'm not sure how prevalent oak is in Australia, because I mean, I know that probably in the likes of Victoria and Tasmania and stuff like that, you've got the climate that oak could thrive in. But anyway, the oaky, I'm not sure if there is Australian oak to make barrels with, but I should look that up. But yeah, the oakiness you get out of this one is more akin to like a smooth American oak, I would say. Remember, they're different species of tree, of course. But yeah, you've got that lovely smooth oaky character in there. There is a teeny little bit of vanilla to it. And the whiskey notes that you get out of this from the barrel are really nice too. It comes across as quite sweet, like a kind of Speyside whiskey, but there's a little bit of grassiness in there and quite a little bit of butterscotch almost. So yeah, more like a kind of Speyside, but slightly floral whiskey note coming out of this. Quite sweet whiskey, all in all. So yeah, the way that all of that, the way that the wood and the barrel in this one goes together, I think is really, really nice. Yeah, beautiful smelling beer, this one. I have to say that it does, everything does go together in that really, really well. But like I say, it's more of a sweet and slightly more floral and grassy kind of whiskey that comes out of this. But on top of that, you start to get the actual elements of the beer. So for me, there's a nice, smooth, like roasty, toasty, bread crusty character to this one. It doesn't come across as too aggressive. It's maybe a bit of carafa or something like that. But of course, the Australians have all of their own malts, which I'm not overly familiar with. But yeah, there's a bit of roasty, toasty bread crust in there. I do get little bits of nuttiness as well. When you sugar the beer up, there is a little bit of rye bread comes out of this one too. So yeah, definitely some rye bread in there. Some wholemeal brown bread as well. But certainly on top of that, you get elements of like chocolate brownie, chocolate muffin. There's something like that going on in here. But you get this degree of silkiness out of the beer as well. When you barrel age a beer, or you let it sit in the can for a year or two, or the bottle or whatever, it does give you this kind of smooth, silky character within the chocolatey notes, and you can smell that in this one. This one is only 2023. Does it say when it was canned? Packaged. Yeah, 28th of June 2023. So this one has been in the can a year. I'm drinking this one for you kind of toward the middle of July. About the 10th or so, forgetting the date. But yeah, I'm drinking this one at about a year old, and you can smell that kind of smooth silkiness starting to come through with this one. And of course, you've got on top of that the fact that it's barrel aged. So yeah, above the kind of bready, sort of sponge cakey, and you know, yeah, there's a sort of chocolatey sponge character to this one, and the brownie and muffiny notes that you have in here. You can smell that chocolatey note, and of course you've got a little bit of the higher percentage cocoa chocolate, you know, an 80-90% cocoa chocolate, but you're also getting good little bits of lighter chocolate in this one, you know, 60-70% cocoa chocolate, which is lovely as well. So on top of that, you're getting the brown sugars, and for me there's a good little bit of leathery brown sugar in this one. And that indicates to me that maybe this beer has had a slightly longer wort boil, but it could also be an effect of the barrel aging. We have to bear that in mind. I don't get the impression that this beer is double mash. It would be a lot stickier and stuff like that in the aroma if it was like that, but we'll be able to tell a bit more when we actually taste the thing. But yeah, some leathery brown sugars in there, definitely some treacle and molasses, sweet caramel, a more toasty caramel as well. And yeah, you've got all the chocolatey notes underneath the beer as well, which I think is really, really nice. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff. This beer isn't really doing anything surprising, if that makes sense. The novelty of this one for me is the fact that it's Australian whiskey, and I'm, you know, being Scottish, I'm not overly familiar with Australian whiskey for obvious reasons. But yeah, the way this beer goes together, it gives you everything that you could want from an Imperial Stout. I think it's great. You do get a little bit of yeastiness in the back of those, which is more kind of brown bready, rye bready leaning. But yeah, I'm quite happy with that aroma. I could sit and smell it all day. Now, on the hoppy side of things, you have to remember as well, this is a barrel-aged beer, and it's also been in the can for a year, so a lot of the hoppy character will have dropped out of this one. You could obviously age this a little bit more if you really wanted to. You don't have to, of course, but that effect of the hops dropping out is going to just, you know, become more and more pronounced. But anyway, the the green component in this one, you've got a little bit of earthiness to it. You've got a nice little bit of herbal character in there, and yeah, then you get some floral aromaticity and also some kind of nice grassiness coming out of the beer. So yeah, a little bit earthy, a little bit herbal, nice little bit of floral character and also some grassiness in there, but obviously you can feel that that's dropping out. I think the grassiness is probably the most prominent of these different notes in there. But yeah, yeah, all in all, I think the hoppy side of this one's kind of what you'd expect, and as I say, it's a really nice aroma that you get out of this beer. Yeah, so on the fruity side of things then, just to round off the aroma, for me, again, it's not surprising, but it's just really nice. Good little bit of like juicy raisin in this one, some plum in there as well, obviously quite a little bit of fig, some black currant and blackberry too, which I really do like. All in all, the aroma of this one, I think, is yeah, all in all, I think the aroma of this one is really, really nice. So it's a big thumbs up from me. I could sit and smell this all day, like I said, but I think we should actually try this one now and see what it's all about. You can see the glass sweating a little bit, so the beer's obviously got some nice air in it, and it will have opened up by now, which is what you want with this kind of beer, in all honesty. So as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, because that's a big experience when it comes to beers like this one. But yeah, this one is the Ramjet 2023 edition, aged in Starward whiskey barrels, 10.8% ABV Imperial Stout from the wonderful Boatrocker Brewery in Braeside, Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and a big shout out, of course, to Mr. Sam Smalley from Short and Stout Beer Reviews. Slàinte just now. And honestly, I took a bit too big of a gulp there when I took that in, but I'm just going to say straight away, yeah, this is a pretty damn good beer. Really, really good stuff. Proper old school, which in honesty is what I want from an Imperial Stout these days. I'm sick of these big, sweet marzipan-y things, in all honesty. Yeah, I think this is really, really nicely done, so it gets a massive, massive thumbs up from me. I think I need to just take a smaller sip of it to kind of actually appreciate it that little bit more. I just took too much in there. Yeah, that's a lovely, lovely sipping beer, this one. I'm going to enjoy this. This is my Sunday lunchtime beer before I go out for a walk. But yeah, this is really good stuff. Based on what I've had from Boatrocker before, I'm not surprised that they can produce something like this, because the IPA and the Scotch ale that I had were really good. So again, another brewery on the list to go and visit and film an out and about video at. So yeah, let's break this beer down then and just describe it a bit more. But I will say straight away, proper old school, roasty, toasty, Russian Imperial Stout, this one. You've just got the barrel character in there, which gives it that bit more complexity. But yeah, middle third of your palate then, the backbone of the beer. You've got that lovely, smooth, American oaky backbone in there. I say American oak because I suspect that's what it is, but yeah. As you move further forward on that oaky side of things, although in fairness, the oak does get a wee bit drier the further into the aftertaste you go, so it could be European oak or even Australian oak, I don't know, I'd be very curious to know that. But yeah, as you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a little bit more of there's a very slight vanilla comes out of the wood, but yeah, the oakiness is more and more dry actually, but still has a little bit of smoothness to it. Then you get the spirit layer out of this one, so let's just have a little look at the kind of whiskey flavours that we're getting in this beer. So yeah, the whiskey side of this beer is quite, it's interesting because it's actually a lot more kind of floral and aromatic than the aroma I believe. I thought it was going to be a more kind of oily, sweet, Speyside type whiskey, but there's, within that spirit layer that sits above the woodiness in the beer, it really has, there's a lot of floral aromaticity in there, and you can really feel that come out of the beer into the aftertaste. That's really interesting actually. So yeah, I like that about this one. That floral aromaticity is quite interesting in the whiskey, but in fairness, you do get a little bit of the brown sugar coming out of it a little bit further on into the aftertaste, and you can feel that lingering there. But yeah, above the whiskey layer, you start to get that roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust, of course. And that's common in a Russian Imperial Stout. But then above that, you've got a rye bready layer, which has a good little bit of graininess to it. So yeah, you get that more dense rye bready layer in there. You get the more wholemeal brown bready layer above that. And then yeah, you start to get the kind of, you start to get a little bit more of a sort of chocolate. I'd say it's more of a chocolate sponge. It's not really a, there's maybe a very slight layer of like chocolate brownie above the wholemeal brown bread, but yeah, it's more like a kind of chocolate spongy type character. And there's a wee bit of a kind of nutty note to this one as well. Yeah, within that sort of chocolate sponge layer, there is a wee bit of a nuttiness that lingers there into the aftertaste too. The nutty character gives it a wee bit of smoothness, in all honesty. So yeah, lovely little bit of nutty smoothness in there. Yeah, lovely little bit of nutty smoothness, and that, as I say, just lingers into the aftertaste. So yeah, the way all of that pieces together, I think, is really quite nice. So yeah, the bready, the rye bread, the brown bread, and the sort of cakey layer that this beer has is quite interesting. Then above that, you start to get the chocolate out of the beer. So as I've said many a time on the channel before, sweeter flavours come out further forward, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. But yeah, you've got the chocolatey layer in this beer, and it starts to show you some of that silky character that I was talking about that you get from both barrel aging and from aging the beer in the can or whatever. But yeah, at the back of that middle third of your palate, you can feel there's a sort of 80-ish% cocoa chocolate there, and as you move further forward, it sort of mellows out and it shows you more of a, yeah, it shows you more of like a kind of 60% cocoa chocolate, something like that. So yeah, definitely more of a kind of 60% cocoa chocolate as you move further forward, so you can feel that it mellows out a little bit. And then on top of that, you start to get the brown sugary side of the beer. So for me, there's a kind of toasty, leathery brown sugary note in this one. So yeah, toasty, sort of more toasty brown sugar in the base. Then you've got that circle in the middle of your palate, which is more kind of leathery, I would say. So yeah, you've got that lovely leathery brown sugar in this one. And yeah, so the toasty brown sugars underneath, sort of more leathery brown sugars in there. And then yeah, on top of that, you start to get the more you start to get the sort of treacle and molasses type notes in there. So yeah, toasty brown sugar, the more leathery brown sugar. I do wonder, I think this beer probably had a slightly longer wort bottle, maybe 6 hours or something like that. It just feels, you get the nice leatheriness there where you've got all the wee bits of, you know, chewy nut and stuff like that within the brown sugars. But yeah, above that, you can feel in the dead centre of the palate, you've got a more treacle molasses type thing, an oily sweet caramel, a little bit of Werther's original butter candy butterscotch as well coming out of this one, and maybe just a tiny little hint of, you know, more grainy McVitie's digestive biscuit in there. So yeah, the way that this one goes together, I think, is really, really nice. Yeah. So, do we need to say anything more about the middle third of the palate in this one? I'm not really sure. I think we've covered everything. We've covered that quite extensively, and that, of course, is where most of the complexity in this beer is. So, let's go to the back third of the palate then. As I've often said, the back third of your palate is going to give you very similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. But yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get the nice little bit of rye bread in the middle, the wholemeal brown bread, the rye bread underneath, the wholemeal brown bread in the middle, then the more sponge cakey character on top. But the base of the base of that front, the base of that back third of your palate is, of course, the woody character in there, and that's got a little bit more dryness to it. You can feel, of course, The spirity layer in this one's got a little bit more kind of, the floral character's just got a little bit more spice to it almost. Then you get the toasty well-fire bread crust, the rye bready character in there's a little bit lighter and more airy and also a little bit drier. Then as you go further up beyond that, you've got the wholemeal brown bready layer, which again is a little bit lighter, drier and more airy. And above that you've got some of the chocolate sponge. And then the kind of leathery, so the more charred chocolatey characters just creep over the top of that, and some of the more leathery brown sugars as well. And then above everything else on the the back third of your palate, you have the kind of yeasty notes coming out of the beer. So yeah, I like that with this one. Let's have a little look at that yeasty side of things then. So yeah, the yeasty side of the beer for me is like it's almost a little bit like that, like Christmas pudding. My dad loved Christmas pudding for his birthday in February, so I know this quite well. It's got that really oily, like English Christmas pudding, like brandy soaked kind of vibe to it. That's the centre of the yeasty quality in this one. Then around that you've got this really oily rye bread and then a toasty well-fired bread crust sitting around the rest of it. So yeah, the yeasty character in this beer is there, and it's quite interesting, and that lingers into the aftertaste as well on the back third of your palate. So you've got the things that linger into the aftertaste with this one are the kind of silky chocolatey notes and that Christmas puddingy note at the back of the palate as well. So definitely you can feel the back third of your palate, the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, the way all of that sort of pieces together, I think, is really, really nice in this one. Let's move on to the hoppy side of things with this beer then. So, as I said earlier, quite a bit of the hoppy character will have dropped out of this one just because of the age of the beer and so on, and it's barrel aged and all that. But yeah, we need to talk about that a little bit. So, back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, there's a little bit of herbal character, and you can feel as you move further and further forward from that, the earthy and herbal notes do come further forward. Then you've got that nice floral aromaticity coming out of the beer as you reach the front corners of the palate. But round the front curve of the tongue, it's that little bit lighter and more grassy, and you've got that little bit of zestiness in there as well, which I think is really nice. So yeah, the way that pieces together, I think, is really nice too. So on the yeah, I think we've said everything we need about the green component of this one, but I do find it's the grassiness and the slight floral note that linger there. But let's look at that front third of your palate and the fruity side of things then. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate is quite similar to middle and back third of the palate. You've got a bit of the rye bread in the base, the wholemeal brown bread on top of it, then the kind of chocolate spongy character, and a wee bit of charred chocolate just sitting on top of it. Base of the front third of your palate is the smooth oak, the whiskey character in there as well, which is really quite floral and aromatic on the front part of your palate. But then yeah, toasty bread crust, rye bread, wholemeal brown bread, and a bit of the chocolate sponge, and then above that you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So let's have a wee look at the fruity side of things just to round off the tasting. So yeah, for me, the fruitiness in this one is kind of as expected. When you take it in, you've got that lovely little bit of kind of raisiny sharpness in there. Underneath that, you do get a little bit of plum, and there's a bit of a kind of datey in the back half of that front third of your palate. There's a little bit of a datey note underneath that. So yeah, raisins, plums, dates underneath. As you move further forward, you get a little bit of an oily sultana in there as well, and some juicy figs for sure. So yeah, a little bit of a juicy figgy character in there. Then yeah, as you move further forward into the front half of that front third of your tongue. It's like blackcurrant underneath and then like sharper blackberry on top. But like I say, the thing with the fruity side of this beer that's quite interesting is that the sort of aromaticity of the whiskey in this one, which for me is quite an unusual component of whiskey in all honesty, or at least to have it so prominent in the whiskey, that changes the dimensions of the fruity side of things for me in all honesty. So that's quite interesting to think about in this beer. But yeah, I think that's everything we really need to say about this one. I think into the aftertaste you get more of the black currant, the fig, and the kind of plummy notes out of this one. And yeah, the sort of silky chocolatey characters, a bit of the wood, the aromaticity from the whiskey, and then yeah, some of the Christmas puddingy notes from the yeast as well kind of linger there. But yeah, let's round off this review then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So for me, this beer, it's full-bodied for sure. Carbonation is very smooth. Quite a sort of silky, oily mouthfeel coming out of this one. So yeah, a mix of silky and kind of oily character to this beer. And then yeah, the IBU of this one, I would say the IBU is quite high, sort of 80, 90 IBUs, something like that, because it's got a lot of roasty toastiness to it. It's got quite a little bit of dryness and things like that, which I do really quite like. And yeah, the malty character in this one, you've got the smooth woody character underneath the spirit there, the nice kind of malty character, which is roasty, then smooth, and then more kind of like a dry sweet character on top. You've got the yeastiness in there, which is a bit more oily, boozy and sweet as well. Then you've got that nice fruity note coming out of this one too. So it gives you everything you'd expect from an old school RIS, but as I say, the barrel in this one for me is quite unique just because of that aromaticity that the whiskey seems to have. But all in all, beautifully done Imperial Stout, this one. I think it would be really cool to see it done with aged in like rum barrels or something like that, or cognac barrels. Or I'd love to try the kind of raw version of this as well, just to see what it's like. But this has been a really interesting one, and it just kind of increases my my positive thoughts about Boatrocker Brewery in all honesty. So yeah, I can see why Sam was quite keen that I have a little look at this particular beer. But I think we can leave it at that for this one now. I can feel the booze going to my head on this one a little bit. It's actually quite good at covering the booze, but you do get a little bit of alcohol warmth down here as well, incidentally. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This one was the Ramjet 2023 edition, a 10.8% Imperial Stout aged in Starward whiskey barrels, Australian whiskey barrels from Victoria in Australia. This beer comes to you, of course, from Boatrocker Brewery in Braeside in Melbourne, in Victoria, Australia. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Boatrocker Brewery as well, and we will definitely return to these guys again at some point in the near future. Hopefully we can do an out and about video at these guys sometime soon as well. But until the next time, Slàinte, skål, cheers, and I will catch you guys in another review very soon. This really has gone to my head. Ciao just now.